Hi. Thank you for attending today's reading. Let's begin. The absolute worst date of my entire life. 18 comments. Share Save Hide Report 97% upvoted. End of story. Next story. My 7-year-old daughter is over here questioning her reality. I guess the main personality traits I have passed on to my 7-year-old daughter is anxiety, curiosity, and existentialism. She is over here questioning her reality. Totally unprompted. At 8 p.m. on a Wednesday with no discernible immediate trigger. Woman facepalming. Guys. IWASNT preparing for this conversation for another 5 to 10 years. In the middle of making her a peanut butter and jelly while she was quietly playing by herself, she totally lost it for about 10 minutes, in which I had to stop halfway through to calm her down. Luckily for her, I'm incredibly experienced in the subject of questioning my reality and hyperfixating for months on end on YouTube videos of philosophy, physics, and quantum mechanics. So I feel I was well suited to answer her questions. Cold sweat smile. She started borderline freaking out and questioning me. Here's how our conversation went. Mom, how do you know if the world is real? Quote. Trying to process whether I heard that correctly. Well, that's a very intelligent and profound question. Do you think it's real? I dunno. But rapid firing. What if I'm alone and every people's is not real but I just think them as real? Quote. Or if I'm not real? Quote. Is all this stuff real? Quote. Are you real, Mom? Mom, are you real? Quote. Well, I think so. I definitely feel real. I think and see the world. I have ideas and feelings. I perceive and learn and create things. Just like you. I feel like that makes me real. But do you see the world from? Like from here? Like in your head? Like from your eyes? Says this as she points to her forehead. Woman facepalming. Yes, Mars, and I think everyone feels the same way you do sometimes. We all have our own experience just like you are having now. But Mom, are you sure you're real? Quote. Well, there was this old man that lived a long time ago named Descartes. Full disclosure. I incorrectly named Socrates at the time when I should have known better. Lol. That says, I think therefore, I am. Do you understand what that means? I then went to a great length explaining that in a way a 7-year-old could understand, which I will spare you from reading. I then explained that overall we are all the same being experiencing the universe in many different ways. I then gave her a bite of my bagel with strawberry cream cheese and she told me it tasted better than peanut butter and jelly. So I asked her if it tasted real. She said yes. So I said, well, since I made it, I must be real too then. She is fine now and has since calmed down and is now playing quietly in her room cause she thinks it will help her avoid going to bed. I think this may stem from a video I showed her yesterday that she was really interested in. The video compared the sizes of things in the universe ranging from the smallest quarks to as large as the observable universe because she was trying to comprehend how big and far away the sun was, and whether people were small or large. When the video got to atoms, I tried to explain to her that atoms were what made up everything in the universe. I told her my computer, the sun, Mother Earth, the stars, the air you breathe, germs like the coronavirus, food, toys, and water. It's all made of atoms. That kinda blew her mind. Lol. Honestly, I knew she had trouble falling asleep at night sometimes. I've also dealt with this my whole life. But I really didn't think these were the types of questions keeping her up at night already. Woozy face, cold sweat smile. End of story. Next story. Has anything ever happened to you so crazy that no one would believe you if you told someone? What happened? End of story. Next story. My sleep paralysis wet dream. In my dream I met one sexy girl at a Halloween party. We instantly clicked and started making out in the back of the club where nobody could see us. Then I started to feel really sharp teeth. At first, I thought it was her costume 'cause she was masking as vampire. But then the biting became really strong. She'd bite my lips and my neck until almost blood started coming out. But I was so horny that a little pain actually turned me on even more. She then whispered to my ear, "What's the tastiest part of you?" and licked her lips. IDKY, but I said, "You already know," and winked. She just smirked and started going down on me. I got instantly rock hard like never before because of the way she was talking. I thought I'll get the best blow job of my life. But I couldn't be more wrong. She pulled down my pants and just took my entire cock at once. She literally had no gag reflex. The stimulants and the thrusts of her lips to my hips were too hard. I've had an orgasm in a matter of 30 seconds. Never have I ever had an orgasm so quickly. She then said, This was a really good snack. But I still haven't tried the real main meal I've brought you here for." She then showed her real teeth. She was a real vamp. I was terrified and petrified. I have been trying so hard to get away, but I was stuck in a wall somehow and couldn't move any of my limbs. She was then slowly approaching me on all fours while licking her teeth and lips, looking at my cock. Worst of all is that I had a boner and I was trying to get soft because maybe, just maybe, then she wouldn't want to eat my cock. But I couldn't. It was too late. She was there and she just looked me in the eyes. Those red, evil-looking eyes. And she took my cock and balls slowly in her mouth while I was begging her to stop while trying my best to still free myself. She just moaned and bite. I woke up, all wet and sweaty. It looked so realistic I was concerned I actually lost my dick. First thing I checked is if I still had it. Thankfully, everything was in place. End of story. Next story. RF. My mother, the witch, created a Disney World challenge in her last will. My mother inherited millions of dollars worth of Disney stock from her father, who was my grandfather. Her father didn't come from money, but he invested every penny he had on Disney's IPO. My grandfather saved every penny he earned from serving in both WW2 and the Korean Wars and, surprisingly, never cashed the stocks in. He gave them all to his only child, who is my mother. I'm one of 3 daughters, whom my mother gave birth to. My mother raised us on Disney and being ultra competitive. My mother tried to live her life through us. Whatever she didn't have or whatever she couldn't do, she virtually made sure her daughters did. We were Irish triplets, where we were all about a year apart. Our father died when we were young from cancer. My earliest memories were visiting him on hospice care. My mother was able to move forward in life without our father. We would even go to Disney World twice a year. Unfortunately, me and my sisters had developed a hatred of each other over the years. My mother pushed us too much with sports. The only way one of us would get attention from her is if we did something spectacular on the field. And if you didn't play well, then our mother would just ignore that sister. So, here me and my sisters sit in the same room for the first time in years. We are here for only the reading of our mother's will. My mother died quickly from liver cancer and I have a ton of emotions going through my mind right now. The one thing that remains is the hatred us three sisters have for each other. As we all sat in the room, waiting for the lawyer to read the will, none of us sisters made eye contact with each other and we're all spread out in the 100 square foot lawyer's office. The lawyer comes into the room and expresses his condolences on the loss of our mother. He then takes the will that my mother made out of his briefcase. My sisters and I are shocked by what the stipulations are to receive the money. To summarize my mother's will, the person who rides the most individual rides in all 4 of Disney World's parks for the months of July, August, and September 2019, combined will inherit all the money. There must have been 100 different rules put in place. To summarize the major rules, which included any tampering with any of the 3 sisters in order to split the money would automatically results in the money going to charity. In order for a ride to count, your whole family must scan their armbands at the entrance to the ride and then scan the photo of the family on the same ride. At the conclusion of this meeting, we all had to submit to a third-party company that they would have access to all of our personal devices and basically watch over us 24/7 to further prevent tampering. Me and my sisters all had 2 kids each and all of the kids were tall enough to ride each ride. This might seem like a fun ordeal, but it's not. It's actually quite sinister. There are about 50 rides in all 4 parks, and with the heat and the lines for each ride, it's actually going to be a horrifying ordeal. Me and my 2 sisters each call our husbands at the conclusion of the meeting, and after getting over the initial shock, all of our husbands agree to the challenge. The challenge starts in 1 week, so we all had to notify our employers, with no guarantee that our jobs would be waiting for us when we returned. The rules of the game allowed us to stay at a Disney resort, which further allowed us to enter a Disney-chosen early-hour park at 7 a.m. and stay for the extra hours park that closed at 12 a.m. We all had to take loans out against our houses. I had to strategize as much as possible in advance. We all purchased annual passes which gave us access to all 4 parks, and Disney allows 3 fast passes at a time. The fast passes allows you to go to the front of the line. But fast passes on the popular rides fill up fast even months in advance. So I really had to sit down and map out the next 3 months and strategize. You can imagine that all 3 of us sisters had different strategies. Me, my husband, our son and daughter, drove down to Disney the day before we were slated to start. My husband dropped us all off at the resort and he went to Walmart and purchased 3 months' worth of non-perishable supplies and food. We stayed at the low-budget, all-star resort. I knew my kids really had no grasp on what this ordeal would entail. We literally had to run from ride to ride, then park to park. The only food that we were going to eat is what was in our backpacks. Our bathroom breaks were going to be minimal. I constantly would need to check my phone to see what fast passes were available at each park. Once we used our 3 fast passes up, what rides were closed due to maintenance issues, and the popularity and the proximity of each ride to each other. To be frank, this was really going to be child abuse because the kids were going to be exposed all day to the horrific Florida summer heat with no more than 6 hours of sleep each day. We could give up at any time, but then we would go back home possibly jobless and completely in debt. The first day went okay. We were able to get in 45 rides. I knew this was nothing to celebrate about because one of my sisters may have gotten all 49 rides in. The only way we would know is at the end of the 3 months of what our actually tally was for each day. The rules also stipulated that if you were able to get in all 49 rides, then the Disney shows would count as well. So each day I really had to assume that my sister were getting credit for a couple of shows as well. The 4 of us fell asleep. The second we hit the bed. We had no choice. But our son and daughter would share a bed. We woke up every morning at 6:30 a.m. and each took 2-minute showers and ran to catch the first bus. I caught on that the first bus would fill up. So the following days we had to get up at 6:15 a.m. We had to ensure our kids were eating and we would carry them when we could, so they could get extra sleep and they would sleep on the rides as well. A week had gone by and each day we either came to the ride limit or we were just one off. This was really starting to become an impossible feat trying to get all the rides in. My crafty sisters were staying in different sections of the All Stars Resort as well. We all had to start at the same park because of the extra early morning hours, and we all ended at the same park because of the park that would have extra hours late days, though our ride selection would differ throughout the day and night. Once I really felt comfortable with the layout of the parks, I would pay attention to my sisters and their families running around trying to get to the next ride. We were all basically like gladiators. I assumed we all were hoping that someone would get sick and had to take time off. Taking one day off in a 3-month span would mean nothing more than defeat, because to make up the 40-something rides would be next to impossible. My kids had really never seen their cousins before, so those quick momentary death stares were the only times they had seen each other. A month had gone by and we were pretty close to meeting the maximum amount of rides each day. We were even able to make a few shows that averaged us into the 50s each day of the rides show count. Though both of my kids were healthy, they were both absolutely miserable. They were starting to develop a hatred for the Disney rides. The only positive was that a ride for them meant additional time to sleep. My husband and I had to encourage them every step of the way. We continued our same routine and made a few adjustments along the way. I was the middle child. My sisters were better natural athletes than I was, but I was much more grittier than they were. I had to be, because I just wasn't as skilled as an athlete as they were. It's now been 6 weeks, which is the halfway point. The constant complaining from our kids is getting to my husband and I. But we had to be understanding and patient. The lack of sleep was really catching up to my husband and I. The kids were able to make up the sleep, but Jeff, my husband, and I were literal zombies. I almost got thrown out of the park on the "It's a Small World" ride. I was just completely tired of repeatedly hearing that song over and over, and the people in front of us were just so lackadaisy in getting on the ride. Fortunately, my husband calmed me down and security just gave me a warning. We made it to the 2-month point and we were still meeting our numbers. Besides having occasional sniffs and sneezes, we were still averaging in the 50s for shows, rides. I saw my sisters every day, and by this point we were all so exhausted that we kind of nodded to each other. But I knew I couldn't give them any hope. I forced my family to walk tall around them with the hopes they would give up. We made it another 2 weeks and we were still averaging over 50 rides, shows a day. I didn't know the long-term effects this would have on my kids. But I also knew the opportunity to obtain $50 million would make up for whatever risk this challenge might cause. I knew we had only 2 weeks left, so I really had to reach into my soul and use whatever strength I had left. I started to see my youngest sister crack more and more. She was still in the game. But I would see her crying at 6:45 a.m. in the morning until 12 a.m. at night. Much like the wilder beast that you would watch on National Geographic. I knew any weakness my two enemies would use as motivation to continue on with the challenge. So, I had to look stern as my sister cried in front of me. I had to look at her like a judge would look at a criminal. After the judge sentenced the criminal to life in prison. Did I feel bad for my sister? Sure I did. But I had to use all the years as motivation. Where Mom would praise her and ignore me. Because she was better in sports. My older sister was like me. Where we wouldn't let each other see us sweat. But I could read right through her exterior and I could see her cracking as well. We finally made it to the last week. My kids have developed a hatred for Jeff and I. But we knew we had only 1 week left. I started seeing my youngest sister come late for the first bus and I stopped seeing her at night. As well. I did see her during the day. But I knew missing a ride in the morning or 2 rides at night could be detrimental. The 4 of us continued to average over 50 shows a day. With only 6 days left, I finally saw my older sister start to crack. Both her kids had colds and she couldn't carry them. Her husband was able to carry one of them. But I would see him have to put the kid down because his arms would get tired. The stopping 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there would also be very detrimental and my older sister knew it. I saw my older sister hysterical at the animal kingdom, where her family were like camels in the desert, where she couldn't get them to move fast enough. But none of this stuff really could have mattered, because if either one of them averaged more shows than I did, then it really didn't matter how much they cried. Maybe they just had a better strategy than I did and were able to get on more rides. But I just didn't know. We made it to the last day. I knew from playing sports. Some teams would have miraculous turnaround wins. So I had to assume we were all even and I really had to get as many shows as possible. My youngest sister and her family could barely walk and she continued to cry hysterically. My older sister looked like she was in really bad shape. But so was I. But I just wouldn't show it. The day was over and the 4 of us did close to the impossible and we made it close to 60 shows. None of us knew who was going to win the overall challenge. But we had a meeting 2 days from now at the same lawyer's office. The 4 of us drove back up north and once again, the 3 of us were in the same lawyer's office and we all thought we were going to win. This time in the office we were more cordial to each other. We were really just too exhausted to be angry. On top of that, I was completely broke. I had a little bit of credit left on one of my credit cards. The lawyer came in and read the results. He first went over some of the rides that couldn't be counted because not everyone in the party scanned their ban upon entrance to the ride or they didn't have a picture of a family member on the ride. I led that category with 15 rides that couldn't be counted, which caused glee in my 2 sisters. Now the lawyer was going over the total shows count for the 3-month period. The 3 of us were literally sitting at the edge of our seats. He then said, the overall winner with 18 more shows than the next sister is. Then he looked at me and said, "It's you, Allison." I let off a sigh of relief and I thought to myself for the first time, I actually beat these 2 bitches at something, especially when it counted. All the years my mother treated me like a piece of trash because I couldn't score a goal like the 2 of them could. But finally it was my time to shine. At this moment, I really cared more about winning than anything else. Years of suppressed anger was finally coming out. The two of them called their husbands right away and they were sobbing uncontrollably. They both were saying how the four of them lost their jobs and how they were going to be evicted. And I was just loving all of it. For the first time. I was the Cinderella. All I wanted to do was go to my mother's grave with cleats on and continually kick divots all around her grave. Because when push came to shove it turned out I was the winner. The two of them continued to sob and I just sat there like a queen on her throne. Then something came over me. Almost like a marathon runner who would assist the second-place winner to the finish line. I say to the lawyer, give them $10 million each. Quote. Everyone in the room including the lawyer says, what? Quote. I repeated, that's right, you both can have $10 million each. Quote. My sisters let off a sigh of relief and thanked me continually. Then the lawyer said that your mother wrote just one letter that had she asked me to read at the conclusion of this meeting. The lawyer breaks away the tamper-proof seal on the envelope and the lawyer starts to read. I know you're all exhausted and I knew from when I concocted this challenge who was going to win. Congratulations, Allison. And congratulations to both of you, Sheila and Brooke, for finishing. I knew Allison was going to win with whatever challenge I came up with, and I also knew that she would be the only one inclined to share the winnings. Because she knows what it felt like to lose when she was younger. I also know that this was the only way I could bring the three of you together. Now you have a lifetime of shared experiences. And I'm sorry how I treated the three of you and especially you, Allison. End of story. That is all for today. If you want to support my automated channel, feel free to drop a like and subscribe. See you tomorrow.